Good evening, I'm Renita Douglas, and welcome to Atlanta International Magazine. Tonight, we experience the Orient, more specifically China, as we take an inside look at one of Atlanta's newest shopping attractions, the Great Mall of China, where one can find everything from rice bowls to items costing thousands of dollars. Here, there's something for practically everyone. Located in Midtown Atlanta in Ponce Square, the Grand Mall of China is the largest retail emporium in the country that offers an extensive selection of authentic Oriental merchandise. Handmade crafts of porcelain, ivory, and jade, Oriental carpets, apparel, and fine jewelry are only a few of the many items offered. Pete, tell us about some of the merchandise available. Are there many one-of-a-kind items offered?
Yes, of course, there are many things here that we have. Well, actually, if you look at it very specifically, all of them are one-of-a-kind because they're each handmade. Many things are very similar, but there will be some changes in each piece because the person finishing it is the ultimate decision maker on what they finally do to each piece. We have a range of things here from 50 cents, which are some little hand-painted fans, up to $60,000. The pieces in here are all imported from the People's Republic of China. They are authentic Chinese pieces of merchandise, and I think some of the things that you've seen in here, they're absolutely beautiful. This is an example of what is called a silver ornament. Actually, it is gold vermeil over a base of silver with enamel and semi-precious stones. This particular one is a double dragon design. It's about 10 inches high, about 10 inches wide. The eyes are tiger eye, and there are also a little turquoise and coral embedded in the crest of the dragon's head. This pair of vases is a very beautiful example of the art cloisonné, which the Chinese have mastered. It's a process by which enamel is overlaid a base metal with a wire separation that creates the pattern in it. This particular pair has Indian elephants for the handles, which is an influence from the Buddhist religion which entered China through India. These are a beautiful example of the Chinese art of hand-carved wood, which they have gone back and painted as different species of tropical fish and mounted them on coral. This is one of China's more famous inhabitants, a panda bear done in bamboo. He is actually a basket. He's having lunch on his staple diet, which is very tender bamboo shoots. For children especially, we have one entire area of the souvenir department that has toys. This is a stuffed dragon. His head moves and he comes in several sizes. Here at the Great Mall of China, we have one of the largest collections of Oriental rugs in the Southeast. They're both in wool and in silk. In addition to that, there is furniture in rosewood and lacquer, including screens, tables and chairs, all kinds of cabinetry, a fine selection of linens, ready-to-wear, and fine jewelry.
This was certainly, or is certainly, a huge and ambitious project. Whose concept was it? Or in other words, the idea for this entire mall was born out of whose idea?
Actually, Mayor Young and some of the other local politicians went to China. They spoke there with some of the businessmen in the Chinese community, and following that, China Resources Artland, which is our parent company based in Hong Kong, got together with the Kadown Group out of Singapore to form what has become the Great Mall of China. The Kadown Group is developing the property here at Ponce Square, which is a 22-acre strip here on Ponce de Leon Avenue, and China Resources Artland set up the merchandise content and operates the store here. We also have a wholesale division, which is in the merchandise mart, that deals mostly with decorators and the trade on a wholesale basis.
So the China America Resource Group, is that comprised of Chinese and American businessmen?
The China America Resources Group as such is a Chinese-owned and operated business. Okay. Many of the people who are involved in the operation are Americans. The store manager here is American. Actually, what has happened is we have joined forces. The Chinese understand very well that they must have Americans who understand the American public. There is a great deal of conversation and trading of ideas between how American business operates and how Chinese business operates. We're learning a great deal from each other. Atlanta was chosen for the site because of what everyone feels is going to happen in this town in the future. It's one of the best places in America to do business. It's a transportation hub, and of course to us that's very important because everything we have must come in, and most of it comes in by boat. The rail system, the air transportation system, the proximity to the ocean, Savannah, Charleston, ports of entry, really help us. Atlanta, actually, the conversations that were held in the Orient with the people was represented as being exactly what it is: a great place to live, a great place to do business, and an up-and-coming area of the country. At the Atlanta International Industrial Park, which is the Cadown Group in America, who is in charge of the mall here and building and improving the property here, chose this site along Ponce de Leon because it is a part of Midtown that everybody feels is really going to see a revitalization. And it's we're proud to be a part of the beginning of it.
Your grand opening was in July. What has the response from the public been since then?
Well, everyone who comes in here loves the merchandise. A lot of people have commented that it's like a trip to a museum. We're not used to seeing as Americans the kind of things that are in here. The jewelry, which is mostly of an Eastern influence, the furniture, which has inlays and is all hand-carved, the ready-to-wear, which is silk, all the Eastern and Oriental influence in the merchandise presented in the way that it is, 50,000 square feet, when you're used to seeing this kind of merchandise in a very small boutique or gift shop. People who have an interest in Oriental goods have been very excited by the fact that we're here. It's a place for them to come and look and find things that they have not had access to before. A lot of the merchandise that we have, we are the only place in America that you can get it. So we're anticipating that we will have a lot of out-of-town people traveling through Atlanta come in and see the store also.
And what effect, if any, do you think this venture will have on the future relationship between Chinese and American businessmen?
Oh, I think that you're already beginning to see an opening up of the business routes, roads, whatever, between the Orient and the United States. The Orient has a lot to offer us. I believe that they also are looking very much forward to being able to move into a situation where there is that open exchange of goods, a flow of money, a westernization of the attitude of the manufacturers in China. Okay? It is for the Americans also a chance to have access to goods that we have not really had access to before on a level that the normal average income person could afford to have it. You know, because in the past it's been very expensive. Cloisonnés and all kinds of ceramics and porcelains, screens, lacquer furniture and that kind of thing have been very expensive. because of the limitation on the imports of it. So I think that we're going to see an exchange of business, an exchange of goods, an exchange of ideas, a better understanding from both sides what the other side's all about, and that we're both nice people.
Now join us as we take a glimpse into Chinese history in a tour of Imperial Lives, sponsored jointly by the China America Resource Group and the Palace Museum of Beijing, China. The exhibit offers an intimate look into the elegant lifestyles of Chinese emperors.
This is an overview photograph of the Forbidden City. It gives you a little better idea of the scope of it. The Forbidden City was begun in the previous dynasty, the Ming Dynasty, and it was completed in 1420. There have been quite a number of fires in Beijing since at the time that the city was built, it was the highest structure, so it was hit by lightning several times. The base is original, but there have been 5 rebuildings that have gone on since that time. You may notice there's a moat around the outside of the Forbidden City, and it centers on Taihudian. That's the large central palace. It's called the Palace of Heavenly Purity. Towards the rear of the photograph are the private living quarters of the Empress, the Emperor, and the royal concubines and their attendants. This is a photograph of a painting of the Emperor Guangxu's wedding. Guangxu was the last Qing emperor, in fact the last emperor, to be married on the throne. He was married in 1889 to his cousin, Yehonala. These series of photographs record the royal procession and the court music of the time that was used in the wedding. It's called Zhonghe Xiaoyue. As we move along, you can see the large number of people who were part of this ceremony. The 2 sets of men who are kneeling on the left of this photograph are the guardians of the military on the top and the guardians of literature on the bottom. Moving further to the right, we have sergeants at arms standing at attention going up the steps. You may notice that on the carpet there's no one there now, only the emperor and the empress can walk down that central corridor. And finally, as we approach the palace itself, if you look very closely, you can see some of the musical instruments, which we have here in the exhibit over in another portion of it. I'll show you that in a little bit. This is another aspect of the wedding ceremony. We've moved into one of the palaces where the seals of office are being brought in by attendants and placed on the table. So these would be the emperor's seals and various other forms of his rank. And now finally we have the emperor himself, Guangxu, and his bride, Yehonala, who have retired to the wedding chamber to a part of the ceremony that's called sitting on the bed. This is actually part of the overall marriage ceremony, which is not a religious ceremony, by the way. You can see that they are dressed in all their finery. The emperor has his rosary of over 100 pearls. The empress carries a necklace made of coral. And the designs on their robes are quite symbolic. The emperor's is embroidered with the sign of the dragon, which is his motif, and the empress carries the sign of the phoenix on hers. The quilts and the curtains on the bed are of the pattern 100 children, which represents the blessings of many, many children. We can also see this on a little lacquered screen, which is on a side table, 100 children. This was not the happiest of marriages. It was an arranged marriage, as I mentioned, and they had no children, unfortunately. The marriage was arranged by his aunt, the Dowager Empress Cixi, whose own son had been emperor prior to Guangxu and had died on the throne. She then placed Guangxu on the throne and was really the power behind it for the rest of the Qing dynasty. Around the year 1900, Guangxu was interested in instituting some Western reforms, educational reforms among them, and he ran into some problems with the Dowager Empress over this. He was imprisoned for the rest of his life and died in 1908. This is the study of the Emperor Qianlong. Qianlong was the fourth son of a fourth son, each of which was chosen among all of his siblings to rule China. Qianlong was considered the last of the great Qing emperors. He was the fourth Qing emperor also. And after that time, it's generally acknowledged that the Qing Empire began its decline. He ruled from 1736 to 1796 and was considered quite a man of, almost a Renaissance man, quite a man of letters. He spoke several different languages, including Latin, which he probably learned from the Jesuit priests there at the time in the court. This was a foreign dynasty. It was the Manchurians coming down from the north. And you can notice the way Qianlong is dressed. He is dressed in a Manchurian style rather than the native Han Chinese style. The collar of his coat overlaps rather than the high, small collar, which we associate with Mandarin collars. And his hat is Manchurian style rather than the Chinese beanie style. Behind him are samples of his actual handwriting, to the left, to the right also. In front of him are pieces of his writing implements. A large brush rests on the table for his calligraphy. To his side is a eunuch, one of his attendants, who is preparing the ink. He holds an ink stick in his hand and is preparing the ink on an inkstone for the use of the emperor. In front of him, you notice some of his scrolls in a large pot. We're now in the dressing chamber of one of the royal concubines. She's attended by her maid at her side as she prepares for the day and the possibility of seeing the emperor at some time during it. She's looking into a highly polished bronze mirror. There were no glass mirrors in the early Qing dynasty. It was a Western import item. But by the end of the Qing dynasty, the Chinese were producing them, and you will see to her side on her right a hand mirror that is glass. But right now she's just looking into a highly polished piece of bronze. On the tray that's held by the maid are several hair ornaments. The maids were not allowed to dress their hair, but the royal concubines and the empress could have elaborately done hair pieces. These are done in enamel and cloisonné with the pearls, and several of them have important symbols which recur throughout a lot of the Chinese decorative motifs. We have rice flowers, the phoenix, again, which is a symbol of the empress, bats, which are a symbol of happiness, because the sound for bat has the same sound as the word happiness, how. So they're often used as a symbol, pointing this out. The royal concubines' makeup was often imported from Europe, and on the table in front of her you see some rouge and powder, which are still left in the original containers. Containers were made in China, but the insides things came from Europe. She might use the juice of berries or flowers to tint her nails or for lipstick. And eye makeup, though, was not too much used. This is a wedding carpet that was made for the wedding of the Emperor Guangxu, who we saw earlier. It's a woolen background and silk embroidery with gold metallic threads, too. It was made in 1889 for his wedding. On the right, you see the design of the dragon, which I mentioned represents the emperor, and on the left-hand side, the phoenix, which represents the empress. The other designs are clouds, and you'll notice in the corners on the bottom, perhaps, if you look very closely, bats, which we mentioned earlier, and one of the bats is holding some nectarines, which is a symbol of longevity, as is the central symbol in the wedding carpet. That character is double happiness, and it represents longevity. It's often used for marriages or for other kinds of auspicious occasions. And the double happiness design, the character is around the border of the carpet too. Down right below the central character, we see another bat, and notice the purple design there. That is a Buddhist design, it represents eternity, a never-ending braid. These instruments are all part of the Zhonghe Xiaoyue performance, the court music of the Qing dynasty. Directly in front of us is a banner that's used more or less as a baton to lead the procession. You'll notice again the dragon, which is a symbol of the emperor. On top, you can see the stars and the sun. Below, the earth and the waves. Therefore, the dragon, the emperor, is between heaven and earth. And this was used sort of as a metronome to lead the performance. We also have quite a few chimes, different sorts. We're looking now at some bronze, gilt-covered bronze chimes. There are 16 of them. 12 of them represent the 12 months of the year, and then there are 4 bass tones. They're used in a particular way. If, for example, the Zhonghe Xiaoyue performance is used at the emperor's birthday, and his birthday was in March, to start the performance, the 3rd bell would be struck, just commemorating the particular month that the ceremony is for. Their tone is regulated by the thickness of the bell. You'll notice on top are phoenixes, again, symbol of the empress, and on the bottom, the instruments are supported by 2 imaginary beasts, the blue animals that you can see. This drum is called a jiangu. It was one of the central pieces in the Zhonghe Xiaoyue performance. It's used to keep time, sort of like a metronome, and we have some smaller drums which were held around the neck and beaten twice for every once that the jiangu was beaten. Notice on the surface of the drum the dragons, again symbols of the emperor. It's sort of interesting that during the Qing dynasty, and in fact the other dynasties as well, each emperor had his own dragon design. Some might have 3 toes, or just different things to distinguish each of the dragons, so that someone, an historian at least, at a glance, can look and see which one of the emperors this represents. At the base of the drum are some more of the imaginary animals which we saw with the chimes next to it.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, I'm Renita Douglas. Good night.